Hi guys, it's Kelly Latavola here, and today we're going to be making a little bunny Valentine Day card using a bunch of W+9 products. And so this is the landscapes borders, the sunshine layers, those are both dies, going places, little bits, and then I also use the sending, hoping, wishing, sending, hoping. I can't never remember what it is, but that's what my sentiment set was. So here I have cut out some of the landscape borders dies. There's a hill, there is clouds, there's like a little slope. It's totally cute and like really easy to put together a scene. And so I just wanted to put a little bit of color on my die cuts. I'm not really worried about the bottom edges because you're not going to see those, but I did want to bring the salty ocean up a little bit just to differentiate one cloud layer from another. And then the first that I used for the hills was mowed lawn. And I just kept the coverage super light. I didn't want it to compete with the rest of the card. I just wanted to be like a hint of color. So I'm going to be stamping in some Copic Safe ink, and I'm just going to stamp them down because I am actually going to be cutting them out with dies. I know. I'll wait while you pick yourself up out of your floor because you fell out of your chair because I'm using dies. Anyway, so now that these are stamped, I'm going to go ahead and start coloring. I knew that I wanted it to be a pretty clean looking card, so I wanted to do my bunny in white. So anytime you're coloring white, you're going to be like adding the shadow areas, and I knew that I wanted my light source to be coming from the top right. So that part of his body, the right hand side of his body, would be lighter. The left-hand side would be darker. There would be a shadow underneath his ear where it's bent over. There'd also be a shadow on that side of his face, underneath his arm, and then where his chin is kind of resting on that other arm. For my darkest color, which was the C5, I just added it where it would be the very darkest, so under the ear and right under the arm. And then I'm just going to work my way back out to that lightest color and blend everything together, still leaving a pretty good amount of it white. I also wanted to just give his ears just a little bit of pink. There's going to be plenty of pink going on in this card, but I wanted him to have a little bit of pink. So with those same C markers, I'm going to color the bunting or banner on the hot air balloon. And here I kind of lost, when I was coloring this part, when I was coloring the basket, I kind of lost sight of like where my light source was going to be. I was just digging the coloring. So they kind of have a middle highlight, which is not completely accurate, but it's a card, so I'm good with it. I'm cool with however it rolled. So here I'm coloring my lightest color, the entire basket, and then I'm just going to do the shading from just the outside edges in. If you're doing a center highlight, which is what most card crafters typically do, it's kind of coloring without a light source, as if the light was looking directly at the piece. It would be darker where the edges kind of wrapped around, and it just gives it a little bit of roundness. So again, I'm working up from my lightest out to my darkest back into my lightest, and just giving it a good one coat with my darkest color. I wanted there to be some texture to it, so I was going to draw the basket weave. I tried it the first time with the E55 and it was just too light, you couldn't see it, so now I'm going to go back in and do it again with the E57. Then we're going to move on to the actual balloon part. I was just really thinking just Valentine, so really heavy on the pinks and the purple. I didn't go red. I just I wasn't feeling the red. I frequently don't feel the red, to be honest. It's a color I hardly ever wear, unless it's on my nails. But so here I left myself because the light source is on the right hand side, so you're going to have a pretty bright highlight. So I left myself like a curved, like a half arc, an arc. That's totally makes sense. Like an arc that was just white. And then on the left hand side of the card, I left myself just a little bit of white on the edges where there would be some reflective light, just for a little bit more interest. Where the balloon is gathered at the top and the bottom, it would be darker there. And then also on the left, there would be like a line of dark where it was starting to be round, where you would start to get that reflective light. So here with the darkest color, you're going to see I'm just going to put like a line of it kind of in the middle-ish. But it will make sense as those colors blend and come together as why that would look like that. And again, just adding, the shading where anything is gathered. So at the top of the balloon and the bottom of the balloon, working back through those mid-tones to blend everything together. And I'm adding a little bit more color every time. So which each layer I'm adding a little bit more color just so that highlight just kind of disappears into the blending, and then going back over the area that I wanted the reflective light to be at. So for the violet, it's basically going to be the same idea. The left-hand side, even though it's one piece, the left-hand side of it is going to be darker, and they will be a highlight on the right. Typically when you see hot air balloons, they're kind of puffy. So the parts where the sections meet are darker because the other parts are kind of puffed out. So I wanted there to be some shading in there as well, so it would look the way a regular hot air balloon looks, but then also the highlight where it would be catching the sun. Here, check your marker caps, folks, because I picked up the wrong marker. The VO4 and the VO6, the marker caps are almost identical, and I just grabbed the wrong one. So thankfully I caught it before I colored too much. But yeah, check your marker caps before you start coloring. So here we're doing the same thing. It's going to be darker on the left-hand side, so I'm being pretty heavy-handed with my darks over there, and I'm going to do that same little kind of like line where there would be just a hint of reflective light, and then blend everything back out towards that highlight. Because the difference between a VO4 and a VO1 is so much, I actually had to take the VO4 over to the left-hand side because it just didn't look like it matched. So it was fine. It was no big deal. It ended up, working out okay. And so I'm just going to blend those in. And then for the lightest color, I'm just really going to leave just like a little sliver of white, not a whole lot at all. What I learned about my coloring with trying to color with a dye, with the intention of cutting out with a dye, is like I totally don't color in lines, guys, like at all. So I'm going back in with my colorless blender, just kind of cleaning those areas up. I wanted to add a little bit of detail to the hot air balloon, so I'm using a white gel pen just to add in some diagonal stripes. Anytime you're doing something like this, you just want to make sure you're going with the shape of the object. So because my balloon is round, my lines are round. They're rounded to the edges that I'm trying to follow. And then I like to go back in with a like a mid-tone from the colors that I had used, and just add that to the darkest parts so it makes more sense that all the lines would not be bright white everywhere on the balloon. Do that at your own risk because it can ruin your nibs. I've been told, I've never had an issue, but you make that choice for your markers. They're your investment. I outlined everything in black before I cut out my dyes. I learned that lesson the hard way. One time I forgot to do it and then I cut them out, and I was like chasing the thing all over the desk. It was a sad sight. So here I'm just going to put these dyes in place and hold them with some, I like ripped up a sticky note because I still have not bought washi tape or painter's tape or anything that would be useful to me in holding something down and not ripping my paper. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere the clouds permanently. So Tempo Mono Multi Glue is repositionable when it's wet. So I'm putting those down and while they're wet, so they'll be permanently adhered. But with the hill, I put on some adhesive beforehand and then let it dry. I'm just going to make sure it's just tacky with my fingers because I just wanted to hold it in place while I use this large die from the Sunshine Layers. And this cuts like this super adorable little scallop edge, which is so stinking cute. And then also, for the bunny, it cuts out the arm. Isn't that so cute? So your little arm can hang over your basket. I mean, that's genius. So I adhered him down, and now I'm just trying to get the placement right because I'm going to stamp some hearts. And that's why I chose the Little Bits set, because there's so many different sizes, and it's a really great tool to have on hand to do things like this. So perspective-wise, things get larger as they get closer to us, smaller as they are further away. So I'm starting with some really small hearts and then working up to some medium-sized ones. And then finally I'll do two of the larger ones in the front. And then it looks like this little bunny is sprinkling all these hearts. And it's the same way with coloring them. Darker objects appear to be in the background where lighter objects are more in the forefront. So I'm using the same RVs that I used to color the balloon with. And I'm just coloring a bunch dark and then doing some just really 2-color simple shading as I work my way down. I did also stamp, you'll see that little heart to the right hand side there. I stamped that out and then fussy cut it out to actually put it in the bunny's hand. So he just looked like he needed to be dropping, like holding the heart to be getting ready to drop it for the scene to kind of make sense. And then I'll be working out here to the lightest color, which is the RV02. And I just really like the way that looked. Like they were just like sprinkling down, you know, sending love and hugs. So I've adhered that heart, that little teeny tiny heart that I fussy cut out. And now I'm getting ready to stamp my sentiment. So here I'm using the Mini Misty, and yes, I know it's hard to see. It's really hard to see in the photograph, but it's especially hard to see also on camera, but I am stamping over a die cut. Don't panic. It's going to be all right. It's going to be good. So here I'm stamping it the first time, and this is the first time I've ever used this stamp. I did not prime it. I didn't stamp it off before. I probably should have, but I didn't. So I'm going to have to stamp it twice. That's cool. That's why I own the Misty, so I can. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp it twice, and then you'll see that there still is a gap where that die cut is. Totally fine. I'm going to go in with my writing pen. I'm going to fill in those little white areas. Nobody will ever know. Nobody will ever know that there was ever a gap there. It'll look fluid. It'll look solid. It'll look awesome. So then here I'm just finishing off the sentiment. I peeled off, that's why I used the repositionable adhesive on the hillside, because I wanted to pop it up on some Scotch foam tape. So I'm popping up the hill as well as the hot air balloon and the bunny. And I'm just going to go ahead and adhere that down. All of my little hearts line up, but it gives some added oomph just because, you know, it kind of is popped up. And then the same thing with my little bunny. I wanted, it's a Valentine and I love glitter because glitter. So I went in with some Stardust stickles. I use these all the time when I first started card making, and then somehow I kind of fell off the wagon. I was using Clear Wing Castella, but dude, I still love me some Stardust stickles. So I put those on the hearts, and then I put some random little dots in between the hearts. And then for the sentiment, I just thought it would be cute for it to have some little white gel highlights. So then finally, I'm just going to adhere this to a white card base. I had toyed around with the idea of doing like a watercolor background. That didn't end up turning out. That's totally cool because I like the white on white. I always do, even though it doesn't photograph like awesome. But that's okay because in real life, whoever gets it will be happy with the card. So that is the entire card. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.